In this video, I'm going to talk about whitening eyes and also teeth. In this particular photo, I don't have teeth, but I can work on the eyes, and it's basically the same steps. I would do this as two separate layers, just so you're aware of that. So first thing, you want to zoom in, Command plus, on the area that you're trying to work on. So I'm going to zoom in on her eyes. If it was teeth, I would zoom in on teeth. There are many ways to do what I'm about to show you, but this is one of the quickest, easiest ways, and it also teaches us the basis of a couple other edits we'll do next. So first thing, we want to have our adjustment layer window open. Okay, so if it's not visible, if you don't see a tab that says adjustments, go to window and open adjustments. Okay, and mine's over here just because I pulled it out. Yours might show up over here, and then you can drag it out or just work on it there if you want. I'm going to move it there. Okay, so what I'm first going to do is look through my adjustments, and I'm going to find the adjustment that says curves. Okay, it is the third one in the top row. Now, this is the same thing as the tone curve in Lightroom. We are not going to do any edit in here. We'll learn about that later, but for this particular one, we're just going to leave this as it is. Okay, one thing we are going to change, and you can see this made its own curves layer here, is we're going to change what's called the layer blending mode. And the layer blending mode is how each layer blends into the layers below it. That is located here. Okay, so we see the layers, below that it says kind, and then it says right now normal. If I click on that, there's a menu, and this is different options for how the layer is blending into the layers below. So to lighten, we are going to change our curve layer to screen right here. What that's going to do is lighten the whole image, and that's okay. That's what we want to see initially. And again, that's changing, all we did was change the layer blending mode to the screen option. Okay, now we're going to invert this little white box. We're going to make a mask. So if you imagine you have somebody's face and then you put a mask in front of it, their face is still there, but we're covering it up with a mask. That's what a mask is going to do essentially to this edit. It's still going to be there, but we're going to conceal it. So to make this little thumbnail into a mask, we're on our keyboard, we're going to click Command I. And we have to make sure this box is highlighted. So if you click off of it and choose something else, you have to come back and make sure it's actually selected. So Command I. Okay, so you see that made a mask, and our mask is black. So curves is still there with the screen mode, but it's covered up by this black mask. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use a brush tool. Okay, and the brush tool keyboard shortcut is B. When you click your B key, this button will highlight, and make sure you are on the brush tool and not the pencil tool. Okay, similar to the tools we've already learned, the clone stamp and the spot healing brush, we have to set the brush options at the top. So that's in the options window up here. If we click on this symbol, it's going to take us to our brush options like clone stamp. So we have a size, we have a hardness, and a shape. Okay, we want a round, soft shape. So we can start at one of these, and then we can modify it. Okay, if I just want to do the whites of the eyes, I want a pretty small brush. If I want to do the entire eye, which in this case I'm going to, then I can do a little bit bigger of a brush. Maybe smaller. And then hardness you have to play with. I'm gonna choose around like 30%. It's a good place to start in general. Okay, next setting, click out of that, is mode normal. And then for now, leave your opacity and flow at 100. Theoretically, I could go lower with these, which we'll learn later, but I'm going to show you a different way to modify it. Okay, next thing, we have to choose our brush color. Okay, so essentially what we're going to be doing with this mask is we're going to erase parts of the mask. You're not using the erase tool though, so if you've learned that, otherwise don't use the erase. We want to use a brush, and we want to use a white brush because it's opposite of black. Okay, so brush colors are here. There's these little miniature buttons above the brush colors that will default the colors to black and white. And then there's this switch arrow that will switch the colors back and forth. So you can go between black and white. You can also use your X key, X, like X-ray, to switch between black and white once you've defaulted. Okay, so again, we won't want a white brush. Then on the image, we're going to paint in the edit that we did with curves. Okay. You'll see, it might be hard to see because it's small, but on the black mask, white areas are going to start to appear, and those are the areas you're essentially erasing with your white brush. Okay, now if I make a mistake, like let's say I accidentally do that, then I can switch to a black brush and I can go back over it and remask it. This is why I want you to use the brush tool and layer mask instead of using the eraser, because it's not permanent and you can always go back. Okay, now once you have it painted in and you're happy with it and it looks good, zoom back out. You're gonna see the adjustment is way too strong. So her eyes are way too bright. If you see teeth, they're probably way too bright. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna highlight this curves, make sure we don't click off of it. And then above it, you see a fill and an opacity. Those are gonna change basically the strength of the edit. In this context, they work essentially the same. So it doesn't really matter if you change opacity or fill. Some contexts it does, but it doesn't matter here. So just click on one of those two and then lower it until it looks realistic. Okay. If you're not sure, so for example here I'm at about, I'm going to go a little lower, about 40%. If I'm not sure if that's too strong or weak, again zoom out just so you can get the whole picture. And then click on that layer to turn it off and on. Okay, and that is a little bit too strong. So on my image, I'm going to back off a little bit, maybe about there. And that looks good. Okay, so that is the curves layer with the screen blending mode, layer mask and brush to brighten eyes. If you want to do teeth, you would just start over at the beginning. Just FYI, teeth, you probably have to go a lower opacity than you do with eyes.